Hello, my name is Jack Meyer. I'm an interviewer for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. I'm interviewing Mr. Hugh Duffy today at the Blue Ash Library. Our camera operator today is Joel Cornelli. Also present is Mr. Duffy's daughter, Kathleen Volley. Mr. Duffy, we appreciate your coming in to participate in this. What we'd like to have you do is just in your own words tell a little bit about your early life, where you grew up, how you came to join the service and the branch you were in, and then tell us about your service time chronologically as you remember it.
Very good. I was born in December 26, 1913 in Cincinnati, Ohio, downtown on 2nd Street, close to Broadway. As I grew up, we moved to the east end of the city, and eventually we moved up into Price Hill. And I lived with I grew up with my sister. I went to Western Hills High School, and at an early age, I went out. This was a time when we had the Depression beginning, and I had to go out and look for a job. So I found a job immediately with the Union Central Life Insurance Company. I was only 16 years old, and I had various other jobs later on. I played a lot of baseball up in Price Hill as a kid, and I finally, my brother called me, who was employed by Ford Motor Company in Cincinnati. He told me that Ford in Cleveland needed a man with your experience as a communications operator. So I didn't fly. I caught a bus and went up to Cleveland, Ohio, and was hired that day in Cleveland. And I worked for Ford until the war broke out, and they closed our office in Cleveland, and I came back to Cincinnati. So my brother and I prepared to go into the Army. As a matter of fact, we didn't. We went in as what they call it. Well, anyway, we went in shoulder to shoulder in Cincinnati, and then over to Fort Thomas, Kentucky.
Now you were drafted, is that right?
Drafted.
Mm-hmm.
We were drafted, both of us at the same time. My brother Bill was 2 years older than me, and an interesting story I'd like to come across with is the fact how we followed each other. And so we were both communication operators before we entered the Army. And of course, that being so, we wound up in the Signal Corps, Army Signal Corps, both of us. That was on June 15th, 1942. Well, I was sent from the Fort Thomas camp to a training camp out in Neosho, Missouri, Camp Crowder, and for basic training. And about 4 or 5 days later, my brother shows up at Camp Crowder. We must have had about 20 or 30,000 troops there, and he found me. So he went through the procedure, but from there I was sent up to this up in New York to Mitchell Air Base. That was around August the 18th of 1942, and I was to join the 315th Signal Company located up there. So about the second week I was with this new company, I was made a corporal, and my brother Bill later on was sent out to an outfit out in California who were all ready to sail. So he left and went across over to North Africa and was in the Tunisian area. And this up at Mitchell Air Base, my outfit, my company commander called me in and said, there's a new outfit forming down in Tennessee by the name of 390 First Signal Company. And we need 6 men off the base, not particularly from our companies. I was the only one from our company who was selected. And 6 of us representing the various parts of the Signal Corps Company took off for Tennessee to join this new bunch of guys. And so when we got there, we learned that the company had moved the previous day to Drew Field, Florida, Tampa, Florida. So the 6 of us jumped on a train. Arrangements were made, of course, and we went down to Tampa, Florida, and joined this outfit. And there were a bunch of rugged boys. And there's a long story involved there. We went to a lot of training. I did a lot of drilling. I was made the drill sergeant. We went up in maneuvers up in the mountains, and by the time we got back from the maneuvers, our outfit was sent to Camp Pinedale in California, Fresno, California. So that's where we wound up. I had several furloughs to come home by train across country and also from down in Florida, and which extended my travel time quite a bit. But then we heard about well, we were told we were going to pack and we're going to move, so we were headed for the East Coast. So we went to this quarters in New Jersey. We were waiting for instructions on what we're going to do. And about a week and a half, they woke us up about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we headed for a train that took us to New York, and which at the end of the train ride, we got off and went into we entered this ship called the Santa Elena. Now, this was a troop ship. I guess we must have had maybe 1,500 men aboard, something like that. I'm just guessing now. And the interesting thing about this is when we boarded the ship, a couple of my buddies said they wondered where we're going. Well, I told them, I know where we're going. We're going to deserted North Africa. And they laughed at me and they said, what makes you say that when the captain of this ship right now doesn't even know himself where we're going? We're just forming a great, big, enormous fleet. But we took off, and we had smooth sailing for 15 days across the Atlantic. And as we entered the Straits of Gibraltar, the second night into the Mediterranean, we had an air attack, which damaged one of our destroyers. But we found out later that the destroyer made it ashore okay over in Spain. So we disembarked at deserted North Africa. And here's what happened. We were on about the 5th day, we were there just waiting for orders. And we pitched pup tents, we were out in the woods. And on Labor Day of that year, we remember it as the famous Labor Day raid. One evening at dusk, 2 German planes came over and strafed our area. And fortunately, none of us were hit. And so that scared us a little bit. But eventually we got orders to go to Algiers. So the outfit packed, I threw my bag and all into a truck, but they were getting ready to take a train ride to Algiers, and when I say they, it's because I did not accompany them. They put me into an ambulance, a British ambulance, and took me to a field hospital, British hospital. It couldn't have been a great big tent. So I had a high fever, so I got stuck. I got stuck there in Missouri. And the reason I mention this is the fact that later on, I was in there about 8 days, but about the 6th day, the flap of the door opened up, and who walks in but my brother? He had a Jeep and a driver. How he found out where I was, I'll never know, but he found me. We had quite a chat. Then after that, after I got out of that hospital, they sent me up on a hill. They gave me something to eat at this little camp they sent me to. Gave me some new clothing and all, and I told them, I don't need that. I know where my outfit is. They're in Algiers. And so they said, well, you got to take it because your outfit may have been shot up. You don't know. So I took it, and it was getting to be dusk, and they set me up on the hill to a big pyramidal tent. And I took my bag, and I walked up to the tent, walked in. Nobody was in it. It would hold probably eight or 10 guys, I guess, but I pulled a blanket out, laid it on the ground. I started to lay down, and I said, no, the hell with all of it. I'm going to get some sleep. All of a sudden, I heard somebody hollering for Sergeant Duffy. And it's dark now, man. It was dark. So I jumped up real quickly and looked out of the tent, and I heard a guy say, Sergeant Duffy. So I said, over here, over here. So he comes over, he says, get your stuff ready, you're shipping out. I said, I'm shipping out? I just got here, I can't be shipping out. He said, oh yeah, your old man is down at the tent, orderly room tent. I said, my old man? You know what that means, commanding officer. I said, he's in Algiers. He said, he's down at the tent looking for you. Well, it so happened that Captain Carlson was his name, drove from Algiers, I'd say 400 miles to pick me up. Can you believe that? He says, Sergeant, throw your stuff in. We'll take it off. Throw it in the car. So we took off. And he said he knew an American outfit in Tunis, and we're going to Tunis for a while and stay overnight. So we found this outfit in Tunis. We stayed all night, got up for breakfast the next morning, and we took off in this Jeep for Algiers. Now I'm talking about maybe 500 miles. So just the three of us, and we didn't have any highways, we had little roads. So the first night when it got dark, he suggested we stop and put some blankets down on the ground and spend the night. We didn't know where we were. There was no sign of animals and no sign of human beings, but we spent the night there. Next morning we took off and arrived at Algiers. Got to Algiers, and I commenced to do my duty and perform a job there. And this is getting to be a long story. I don't know whether you want to listen to it.
What were your duties? What were the things that you did?
I was in charge of landlines communication. But now our company consisted of personnel that handled radio, headquarters unit, different parts of a signal company. And I was in charge of the landlines communication. And we'd set up operations, and everything was coded, as you probably would know. We didn't know what we were doing as far as how the messages read or not. We just, everything was in code.
Did you have code machines then?
Cryptography section had the code machines.
But they were part of your
outfit
company? Yeah.
Yes.
And you were supporting the Air Force at this point?
Absolutely. It was all for the Air Force. It was called the AFSC, MC, Army Air Force Service Command Mediterranean Theater of Operations. Okay. And that's who I wound up with all the time, and from there on. And we had many incidents happen. I'm patting myself on the back when I say this, but this is what happened one day. My company commander, we lost Captain Carlson, and we got a new captain by the name of Simon, Captain Simon, a swell man. He called me in one day at the office. He said, Sergeant, sit down. So I did. and he pulled out lieutenant bars and placed them on the table, second lieutenant bars. He said, now I've got the authority to pin these bars on you. But he says, I want to tell you something before you accept them. He says, I want to go home. He said, now, the war is over here. We're through the war in Italy. And he says, I'd like to go home. He said, now, if you take these bars, you're liable to wind up in the Pacific because the war is still going on in the Pacific. He said, I'll give you 2 days to think it over. So he put the bars back in the drawer. The next day, I went to see him, and I told him, I'm not interested in the bars. I'd like to go home, too.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting thing.
Now, you were in Italy at that point?
In Italy, up in Italy, I'm sorry. Yes, it was in Naples, Italy. But I had taken many trips. We had a group of 21 of us left Algiers before the rest of the company. We had to fly up to Bari, Italy, that's on the eastern coast, and they needed some men. So 21 of us went to that, joined that out on detached service. And as we flew over Bari, the whole harbor was ablaze. And I found out later it was our Allied ships. But we flew over in C-47s, and we had to get out of the plane. We had to sleep in the woods. That's but our duties were performed. We had a headquarters, as we found out, close to the harbor. And so we all had to set up communications. I had to put my men on 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, and carry out our duties. And we had a number of different bombings while we were there, had to run for cover. So eventually we moved in this new outfit across country to Naples, Italy. And we were performing our duties there for a while, and all of a sudden we got notice, the 21 of us who were from the original 391st, to go back to Algiers. So we got a C-46 and flew back to our old company. When we got there, we found out they were packing. And lo and behold, the whole company, the 391st, which is my outfit, flew back to Naples, Italy. So I did a lot of flying over there. And that's about as many things I can remember. The dates on those things, I got some dates written down, but we won't go into that. So you can hold up on.
If you tell me, during the time you were in either North Africa or Italy, what was the most difficult circumstance you ran into?
The most difficult things were we had many raids from the air. The Germans bombed us at night. Daytime was fine. They never did bomb us in daytime. It was always at night. So an interesting thing there is the fact that when we were off duty, we could play baseball. We had a softball team. We had a football team. If we were on duty, of course, we couldn't participate. But I wound up with I fielded a team that I managed, and we won the championship one year. This was in 1944, I believe, 43 or 44. So we were able to enjoy ourselves at times.
You never had direct combat. In other words, you suffered a lot of bombing raids.
Yes.
But were there never any infiltrators or anybody they had to worry about got up close?
No, I'll tell you, I'll explain one of the bombing units, which was the worst for us. I was responsible for getting the men out of our building where we were domiciled, and the sirens went off, and I had to clear the guys out. I was probably the last one out, and I was running for cover, which is the cover was what we would call an incline here. It took passengers up to a little village up on top. And at the bottom was an area where all the close living civilians would run for. And that's where we were supposed to run for. And that's what, this one raid, this night, this was the worst. All the sky was all lit up, and it was dark on the ground floor, and I was running. And all of a sudden, I fell, I skidded, and lost my helmet, busted my watch. I got up and I proceeded, I got inside this building, I call it a building. I dove in on top of some of my men. So to make a long story short, well, first of all, I heard my company commander hollering for volunteers, our motor pool was hit. But we had 3 men in our motor pool through this, and they were injured badly. And eventually they were given the medal.
Purple Heart.
Purple Heart medal. When it was all over, I got up and we all walked back to the building we were in. I took off my boots, and my right foot, the big toe of my right foot was as black as the ace of spades. I'm telling you, it looked horrible. So one of my buddies, his name was Tommy Harrod, he says, "Sergeant, you better report that." I said, "No, I'm not going to report it. I don't want to go on sick call. We got work to do." So I put up with it. Eventually it all cleared up all right, except the big toes. To this day, it's all right, but it took a while to heal up. And the reason I mentioned this, if I had gone on sick call, I would have gotten one of those medals too. What do you call it?
The Purple Heart.
Purple Heart.
Yeah.
Well, I regret now that I didn't report that.
When did you come back from Italy to the U.S.?
Let's see.
In other words, you were in the Army until November of '45.
That's correct.
What did you do in that span of time?
The latter part of '45?
Yeah.
Well, when the war ended, we had, our duties were not as extensive as they were during the war, and we had a lot of free time. As a matter of fact, they gave us trips that we could take to different places. Some of the boys went to Switzerland, flew to Switzerland, and I took a trip up to the northern part of Italy, a famous resort town. I can't think of the name of it right now. And things like that. We're just waiting to go home, waiting for orders to go home. That's about all there was to it. So they called me in one, we did a little gambling now and then, little poker games and things like that to pass the time away. And finally, when I was called to go home, I boarded a Liberty ship. That's a small ship. And it took us 19 days to get from Naples, Italy, to the state of Virginia. 19 days, horrible. The ocean was horrible. The ship would go up and come wham, and come down and hit like that. One morning, the captain of our ship told us we never gained an inch all night. So it was just a rough ride home. I was discharged in it's the November of 1945. And I was discharged at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. that's about it.
You, obviously, with what we see here on the table, you have retained a lot of memories of this. How has your military service impacted on the rest of your life, do you feel?
Well, when I came home, I went right back to Cleveland, Ohio, and started to work for Ford Motor Company. They presumed that they opened up the offices, and I carried out my job. And in 1950, we heard of a Ford plant being built in Cincinnati for automatic transmissions. It was called the Fairfax plant. So when I heard that, I immediately went to Dearborn, Michigan, and asked for a transfer from Cleveland to my hometown of Cincinnati. And they granted me that, and I came back to Cincinnati, and they were just building this Fairfax plant. And I was one of the first ones to participate at that plant. And they eventually, in 1958, they built the Sharonville plant. I transferred over to the Sharonville plant and performed my duties there. But I finally got out of communications into industrial traffic management. And I retired in 1974 at that particular type of work. And that's about it.
Now, where'd you meet your wife?
Well, I'm sorry about that story I wanted to tell you. Let's go back a little bit. When we disembarked over in Bizerti, we all had a taste of it out in the ocean, but I said, by golly, I'm going to check on some, I can't think of the word right now, get some religion. When I was a kid, I went to Sunday school, a little bit once in a while, and I just lived a Christian life. But I said, by golly, after we went from Bizerti to Algiers, I looked up a Catholic priest in Algiers. And it so happened to be this man was an army man, a captain. And he's from Cleveland, Ohio. I thought that was coincidental. So he gave me some instructions, and I became a Catholic. And primarily that, combined with the fact that my girlfriend at home was a devout Catholic, I thought I'm going to become a Catholic. So is that the story you're talking about? There's many things that went on through in all those years. You know, you can't come up with them immediately. But I was called in Naples in 74, in 1974, latter part of 1974. They called me and told on a Thursday they approached me. When I say they, I'm talking about our master sergeant. He called me and he said, Duffy, he said, you're supposed to report Saturday at noon in the main office. And I said, well, what's it for? He says, well, just get cleaned up and you be there at noon on Saturday. And I wondered what the devil was this all about. So I put my suntans on. I got there at 12 noon, just like I was supposed to. And there was a group of people whom I did not know. One was a general, and he had just pinned the medal on a man I'd never seen before who was in the Air Force. And lo and behold, all of a sudden that was finished, and they read a citation on me. And I could read the citation if you want me to.
Go ahead.
Here.
Right here.
Oh, here we go. It says, Headquarters, Army Air Force Service Command, Mediterranean Theater of Operations, APO 528. Citation, Bronze Star Medal. Hugh F. Duffy, 3545-8411, Staff Sergeant, Signal Corps, 391st Signal Company Aviation, Chief Operator from October the 10th, 1943 to May 8th, 1945, by continual supervision, training of personnel and new methods of procedure, and maintained a very high degree of efficiency in the teletype station of Army Air Force Service Command, Mediterranean Theater of Operations. It was also through conscientiousness and devotion to duty, requiring many long hours of work that the subordinate stations of this command have strictly adhered to proper procedure. And it was through his efforts that a high degree of teletype discipline has been maintained on the circuits, thereby carrying out existing War Department and theater directives on the use of landlines. Entered service from Cincinnati, Ohio. And that is, they read that citation, and they told me to approach this one-star gentleman. I approached him and saluted him, and he pinned the Bronze Star Medal on me and shook hands. I got a picture of him here somewhere doing that. Right here. I had the dates wrong on it.
Obviously, you were you seen as the old man by some of the kids? You had teenagers working for you, didn't you?
We had what? I'm sorry.
Teenagers.
Oh, yes, that's true. Some of my best buddies were 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, youngsters, yes. I was a little bit older. But when I joined the outfit, there were a bunch of raw recruits, and I was a section chief, of course. I got my staff sergeant rating, but I had to perform a lot of drill work. I was a drill sergeant in the States. Of course, overseas, there was no such a thing as drilling. And a lot of these boys, as you say, were a lot younger than me, and they looked up to me. And as a matter of fact, we get together now. We have reunions every year, and this year had it in Wilmington, North Carolina. And we have every year our force dwindles.
How many were there last year?
This past year we only had 6 men and their wives, and their wives keep this thing going. But there's one, I like to pat myself on the back, and one of my buddies, he gets up and says, the best boss I ever had in my life was Sergeant Duffy. And he said, if I ever have to work again, I want a man like him. And they thought highly of me. They respected me. And another boy who was a buck sergeant said, gets up and says, Duffy was the most popular non-com we had in our outfit. And he not only was that, but he was the most respected. And I enjoyed listening to things like that. I really enjoyed that. We had a good bunch of boys,
Yeah, let's cut the tape just a minute.
I want to mention something about after I was discharged from the Army. I come back to Cincinnati, and I went back to my job in Cleveland, Ohio. My Ford Motor opened up the offices that I had left earlier. And of course my girlfriend was in Cincinnati. Her name was Millie, and we had phone contact, and she did all the work arrangement for our marriage, which I knew when I went to Cleveland that we would get married. So it was set, the date was set on March 2nd, I believe it was March 2nd. Anyway, I came down to Cincinnati, and we got married, and eventually raised three children in Cleveland, Ohio. All three of my kids were born in Cleveland. And that was, as I mentioned before, in 1950, I put my three kids in a car with my sister, who was up there in Cleveland. And I drove to Cincinnati and stayed in Cincinnati. Went back to work in Cincinnati at Ford Motor Company. I did want to mention that, the fact that my three kids were born in Cleveland.
Housing wasn't the easiest thing to find at that point in time, was it? Did you have trouble finding a place to live in Cleveland with your family?
Oh, definitely. I had a horrible time. The residents of Cleveland that lived there all their lives were looking for places to live. And what they did when I went to Cleveland, before I went to Cleveland, the Cincinnati Enquirer, I read an article about Cleveland. So I hopped on a bus, went to Cleveland, and I stayed at the YMCA downtown Cleveland because I didn't know where to go. And I picked up the Sunday morning, not the Enquirer, but the newspaper in Cleveland. And there was an opening for a person in East Cleveland to share her house. And I phoned this lady, and she says, well, come over and see if you like it. So I hopped on a streetcar, went out to East Cleveland. The lady owned this house. Her name was Mrs. Horsley. She showed me, she had a man who lived there, an elderly man, and she was very elderly. And we had quite a chat, and she accepted me. And that's where I stayed for about, with her for about a couple months. And lo and behold, the county built up a lot of homes for the GIs, because we had GIs coming home from the war that had no place to live. And this was an enormous field with small units. And I got one of them on a rental basis. And we lived in this little house for quite a while. And then we found other places later on. But it was difficult finding a place to live in Cleveland, Ohio after the war.
Okay, now you've got some things here on the table. Maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about some. Let me hold this one up, and you can tell us what it's all about. Looks like your military career.
There we go.
I can hold it.
Okay. Well, this, of course, to begin with, a little photo of the general pinning the medal on me. And this is MAAF, that stands for Mediterranean Army Air Force. And these are the pins that we wore on our uniform. And the fact that I had received the Bronze Star Medal, which is this medal right here, and two stars on the ribbon. These are battle stars. One is for Rome, Arno, and the other one is Naples, Foggia. Two battles on that ribbon there. And this right here is our symbol. We were known as the Blue Devils. And these are the various medals. This is a victory medal here, and this is a medal for the European, African, Middle Eastern campaign. And this is the Bronze Star Medal, and this one is the Good Conduct Medal. And these five are the months that each one of these stripes here represents 6 months overseas. So it's 2.5 years overseas. And this is a company award for meritorious service. Our whole company received that from the Air Force. And this is the Mediterranean Army Air Force insignia. And these two, this represents a Signal Corps.
Right.
And this is the U.S. Army. And that's about it. And this is my staff sergeant rating. I never did get any higher, although I was offered higher, but I didn't accept it.
Who put this together, did you, or?
Uh, a friend of mine, he's not a good friend of mine, I learned of him through a good friend of mine that put this together for me.
Okay. Anything else here you want to tell us about?
That's about it, I guess. And this was mailed to me about a couple months after I got home from the service. What they did, well, not only this was mailed, I received these medals all from St. Louis. Because at time of discharge, they didn't have time to give you things like that. But my records were checked in St. Louis, and to check my records, all these medals were received in the mail.
Mr. Meyer, would you hold that up again, please? Thank you.
This one here was,
Thank you.
this was received in the mail, and it's got my name inscribed on it. But this medal that the general pinned on me here, of course, didn't have my name on it.
Is that the one he pinned on you?
Pardon?
Is that the one that he pinned on you, or?
This is the one he pinned on me.
No, I mean, is this the medal here?
Oh, that's it, yes,
Yeah.
that's the one he pinned on me, I'm sorry. Yes,
Okay.
that's the one he pinned on me.
Okay.
First, and
Okay. Yeah.
but I'd like to mention
Sure.
something in here. There are pictures of us, and also articles in here. A statement by my company commander, and also Army Air Force Service Commander, a colonel from the Signal Corps, it's a colonel from the Signal Officer. And the history of our 391st is outlined by a number of officers in our outfit.
So that was kind of done like after the war was over.
This was done after the war.
Yeah, all right.
And there's a good article in here by one of the Air Force men patting us up on the Air Force officer commending us for the Meritorious Service Award. And also pictures of my baseball team. There's a picture right here, our men on duty. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a small picture of me over some of my men. This is the type of work they did. And this is the telephone section. And this is the radio section, different part of our operations of our outfit.
So it boils down to a unit history, huh?
Yes, right. There's each section, the men that represented each section are pictured here. And then we, as I mentioned before, we won a championship over there in softball. And I was the manager player. I played shortstop. And then we also had a real good prize fighter in our outfit, who in Algiers won a number of good fights while we were there. And he was a light heavyweight by the name of Walter Zippel. And here's a statement by Lieutenant John Cannon, Commander-in-Chief of the Mediterranean Allied Air Forces, talking about things that our Signal Corps unit performed, patting us on the back. And in this is cartoons by one guy who used to be a cartoonist. And here's an article by Brigadier General Lyman P. Whitten, stating a few words from him about the job we did supporting the Air Force with communication. And there's different articles like that. And I kept this for all these years, and it's sort of not in too good a shape anymore, as you can see. But there's some good, interesting articles in here.
Did are any of the other members of the unit from the Cincinnati area?
Are there any other people?
Any of your people in that company come from Cincinnati?
Oh, no, none. They're mostly Southern boys, mostly Southern. But we also had a football team. We played, I didn't play, I got the group together, I coached them. And our games, we had a lot of fun playing these games. It got a little bit rough. But I refereed the bouts, and I couldn't get anybody to help me. So it was quite a job refereeing football. But our company commander called me in one day. He said, "Sergeant," he said, "we've got 4 men in the hospital because of football." And he says, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, sir, I think you're leading me into saying, well, it should stop football." And he says exactly that. We're going to have to give it up. Too many injuries. We need these men to play, not play football. We need them to perform their duties. We don't have their duties performed if they're in the hospital. So we gave it up. We quit the football. That's about it. Children grew up. My oldest daughter, Kathleen. My second daughter, Diane, and my son, Michael. The oldest daughter eventually married and raised 3 boys. I'm sorry, raised 2 boys, Tony and Matt. And Diane raised two girls. Daughter Kathy raised 2 boys, Tony and Matt, and a girl, Andrea. Andrea right now is going to college. This is her, I think it's third year. It's her 3rd year. And she's got all of her expenses paid. She's a tennis player. And she got the name of the college is upstate in Ohio. It's called Bowling Green University, and she's very happy up there. She's doing a real good job too. And let's see, and Diane raised 2 daughters, and Mike, my son Mike, in his youth was a very good athlete. He played a lot of football, he played a lot of baseball, and they're all grown up now.
If they'd ask you about the war, and if maybe this is the first time they've heard some of these stories, but you haven't talked about it? Or
They've heard many of stories, yes. In past years, I'd tell them all kinds of stories which I could never think of anymore. But yes, they have heard a lot of my stories.
I was wondering what they thought about fighting and freedom and all this sort of stuff that the rest of us have enjoyed because of what you did. Do they think about that at all? I mean, my nieces don't think about that at all. They're about 30.
Well, they don't bring up the subject as much as I'd like them to, but I have told them funny stories and many other type stories, and they know something about World War II. My kids do, yes.
Good.
I've told them a lot of things.
You were fortunate in that your military service tied right into what you'd been doing in civilian life, and then you came back to the same type of thing. So,
that's right.
Did you learn some things in the military that added to what you already knew? Around communications, around?
No, not really. It's the only we had to set up our own electric systems in the overseas, and we had boys who were mechanics and knew how to do those things. I was a leader of the section because I had so much experience in communications, and I had a good group of boys who listened and did a good job. And it's not simple to sit down and punch out messages which were important. The Air Force couldn't do without. It was all 5-digit coded words, like Z, B, L, J, and M or something like that. And boy, punching a machine, if you made a mistake, it could be very harmful. So they had a lot of pressure on them.
Your citation mentioned that you had a high degree of accuracy. How do you teach accuracy for the same kind of job? I can't imagine how that you could teach accuracy.
Well, we had a lot of training time. We had a lot of training time at these various posts. Out of Camp Pinedale in California, these boys are schooled, until they performed right. That's why we had to go on maneuvers. We got graded on our maneuvers, and we passed the grade by higher ups. And that's how these youngsters learn how to do things.
Okay, Mr. Duffy, we very much appreciate your coming in and sharing all this information with us. And if you have nothing else you want to share off the top of your head, this will conclude the taping, I guess.
Thank you very much.